Hello, I'm William Burke, author of Voodoo Child, Book 1, Zombie Uprising. Some people asked me who my influences were, so I thought I would do a quick video about that. There are a lot of writers, both past and present, who have influenced my work or just distorted my mind in one way or another. And either way, I thank them. Now, there are more crime and mystery writers on my list than horror writers, and I freely admit that horror movies have influenced that aspect of my writing more than horror novels. Okay, first up, we have Lee Child. Now, Child has written over a dozen books about his hero, Jack Reacher, who's a former Army officer turned drifter. His plots are very complex, filled with great twists and turns. His characters are compelling, and his action scenes are intense. I mean, Jack Reacher's fistfights are almost poetic. Next up, Robert Crais. Robert Crais also writes about a reoccurring hero. Well, actually there are two. There's the wisecracking private detective, Elvis Cole, and his brooding and often silent partner, Joe Pike. Crais began these novels back in the 90s as kind of a lighthearted take on the crime genre. But as the books progressed, the characters became more nuanced, and the plot started to take a darker turn. Now, one of the other unique things about Crais is he will introduce new characters as main characters and shift his reoccurring characters into supporting roles. I particularly recommend Suspect, which is the story of an LA police officer who is suffering from severe depression after his partner is killed. He's teamed up with a former military dog named Maggie, who is suffering from canine PTSD. It sounds like a strange plot for a book, but it's amazing, and also very touching. I understand Crais actually wrote the book after his own beloved dog died, and you really sense that bond between man and animal throughout the book. Very highly recommended. Shifting away from crime, we have Christopher Moore. Christopher Moore is a humorist, and I particularly love his earlier books, like Island of the Sequined Love Nun, Blood-Sucking Fiends, or You Suck, which is actually the sequel to Blood-Sucking Fiends. They're entirely unique, and Christopher Moore is just a master with words. These books are also perfect for horror fans because they are filled with vampires, demons, cannibals, you name it. Now I want to shift to writers who were important in my formative years. I was fortunate to discover some very eccentric authors during my teens and early 20s when my mind was malleable. Oh, and even though I said horror writers weren't a huge influence, I'd be really remiss if I didn't tip my hat to Stephen King. In my day, every teenager read King, and it always left an impression. One of the standout things I think King pioneered was referencing real-life details, from the cars his characters drove, to the breakfast cereal they ate, to the beer they drank. These kind of real-world details cemented his characters' everyman status, and they also made the supernatural aspects suddenly seem more plausible. He's an amazing writer who's influenced anyone in the horror genre, whether they realize it or not. Okay, next up, Jim Thompson was a hard-boiled writer who depicted characters living in the most hopeless and bleak situations imaginable. One of his early books, The Killer Inside Me, was a first-person glimpse into the mind of a psychopath, and it's still chilling. Some of his books were clearly cranked out for the money, but when Thompson was on his game, he just created dark masterpieces. A fun bit of trivia is that Thompson actually co-wrote the screenplay for the Stanley Kubrick's classic noir film, The Killing, and also Paths of Glory. This is one of the old Black Lizard press reprints, kind of done in the style of the early paperbacks. I really love these. And while we're doing bleak, Harry Crews wrote what you could call Southern Gothic, but his books were always the just unique vision of a genius writer. A Feast of Snakes is a personal favorite of mine. This is set against the background of an annual rattlesnake roundup with characters that are involved in dogfighting, petty crime, and other ones who are just desperately clinging to their sanity. Crews wrote about characters that should have been repellent, but he always humanized them in ways that was sometimes humorous and sometimes heartbreaking. Again, A Feast of Snakes, Carr, The Knockout Artists, these are just great pieces of work from someone I think is a genius writer. Now, another writer I discovered in my early 20s and devoured was Harlan Ellison. I'm going to get a bigger table. Harlan Ellison is someone that could be categorized as a science fiction writer, but in truth he was someone who often used science fiction as a vehicle to express whatever his ideas were. He's a brilliant novelist, short story writer, and essayist. Ellison is also a fascinating guy. He wrote what many consider to be one of the best episodes of the original Star Trek, the City on the Edge of Forever, but actually forced Gene Roddenberry to take his name off of it because Roddenberry altered his work. He also must have set a record for being fired by Walt Disney after one day for, I guess, verbally defaming Mickey Mouse. His writing is brilliant, his antics are amazing, and you can read a lot about his adventures online. This is a copy of Gentleman Junkie, which was his first collection of short stories, which launched his career because Dorothy Parker somehow or another got a copy, read it, and gave it a rave review. So I hope you enjoyed this little tour of my literary favorites, and please check out Voodoo Child, Book 1, Zombie Uprising. Thanks for watching.